Ready to rock and roll? Is that action? All right. Okay.
That's right.
All right.
Absolutely. Go. Go.
Hello, everybody. It's Jason Will with
Go.
So this is a real estate podcast, but we talk about leadership, personal growth, and becoming the best version of yourself. Leadership, check 1, 2, check 1, 2. Growth, best version of yourself.
Go.
So this is a real estate podcast. Dusty Cole, welcome to the Impact Agent Podcast.
Thank you for having me, Jason Will.
You came a long way, and I know that there's going to be a lot of value offered from this conversation, whether you know it or not. So that's what we're trying to do here at this podcast. We're trying to impact the lives of agents, but also in the process, hopefully make an impact on our community. And you have a really interesting story. I know you're a very humble and modest guy, but it is, in our industry at least, we're dealing with what I would call a phenomenon.
Okay. In what way?
Well, you were able to make a very uncommon transition from part-time agent to full-time agent while still maintaining a full-time job.
Yes.
And that job was more than just full-time.
It was a big job.
I mean, you were working for your parents, but you were working more than 40 hours a week.
We were, yes. It was a business with the head operating hours, 9 a.m. to 1 a.m., service industry business. So yeah, I mean, it was, with about 100 employees. So it was very intense.
Dusty's parents own Gulf Bowl, which has 2 locations.
Right.
So you got the Eastern Shore, well, it's Gulf Bowl and Foley, Eastern Shore Lanes and Spanish Fort.
Correct.
Got to get that right.
Mm-hmm.
So you're driving back and forth from Spanish Fort to Foley, servicing both locations, correct?
Correct.
And you had done business with our real estate team, and you were just getting into real estate investing and thought, hey, this looks kind of fun. I might like to try this.
Pretty much. For whatever had enough money to invest somewhere, I chose real estate, and bought a rental property, went through Jason and Diana. That might have been like 2012, maybe, something like that.
And, thought, hey, this might be a fun career. So I'll get my license and I'll just do it part-time. Mm-hmm. But then after you got in a little bit, you're like, hey, I could probably really spread my wings, get out of the family business and do something on my own.
So yeah, the original idea of getting my license was to just kind of buy and sell and do flips and buy rentals and just have that extra, access to the information. It also, of course, save on commissions. But once I kind of got in the meat of it, and I started learning, I started to just be drawn to it. And I just kind of started to notice I have a passion for it. And there was really no holding me back after I kind of got my taste of it.
Well, what do you think was, the fundamental core qualities that you have that you were able to make that transition from a full-time career to a full-time real estate career? What was inherent in Dusty Cole that made that a reality?
Well, in the beginning, I viewed it as 2 full-time jobs, so in my mind, that was my mindset. I think mindset's critical. So I was viewing it as, okay, I have 2 full-time jobs. It wasn't long that I realized that really wasn't fair, to, the family business. Looking back on it, there's no way I could be of complete service in my role there and do real estate. So, it became a crossroads. I think some of the attributes, maybe that you're alluding to, a communicator. I was a really good communicator, I believe, and just work ethic and consistency. And whenever I made the transition to real estate, I treated it like a job, a career. We went to the office every day. I don't know, is that kind of what you're...
Yeah, imagine that. You treated it like it was a job or a career.
Yeah.
Not as a hobby.
Not as a hobby, yeah. And maybe that we can get into that topic a little bit, but that is kind of an important idea for me. But absolutely. I mean, we looked at it as a long-term play. We were in the beginning of building a business, and then we approached everything in that way. And that kind of shapes the actions you take. In the beginning.
Absolutely. We talked about on the ride over from Baldwin County over to Mobile County, we do have lots of people that reach out to us on a very consistent basis, asking us about the potential of them making it in real estate and picking our brains and all that stuff. It's one of the neat things about our industry is that there's several people that that have either thought about being a realtor or dreamed about it. I mean, it's fascinating. It's a fascinating industry to a lot of people, but how do you handle those conversations when people call you and ask you if they should get in the business?
I'm really careful because I don't want to come across as being negative or cynical or pessimistic, right? Because it really is a great industry, a great career, and we feel blessed to be able to experience success in it. But there's definitely a huge misconception on what the job actually is and what it takes to be successful. I think some people see the closing pictures online on Facebook, and they feel like we get in because you have all this freedom. I mean, sure, you have freedom, but not so much if you really want to be really good at it. You have to treat it like a job. But so when I get those, I almost have to be guarded on what I say because I don't want to crush their ambitions, but the reality is that it's a really slow build. And just because people doesn't mean they're going to hire you. There's just a lot to learn. And it's not as easy as it looks.
I really think it is extremely hard. And I hear that, I get that validation from my most veteran agents who are the most successful. I mean, you mentioned, right off the bat that mindset is critical. I get that from them constantly. It seems like, they appreciate the tactical information I bring to them. They appreciate the innovation and all that stuff. But what they really need is mindset. They're really starving for mindset because this industry will beat you down because you're dealing with people who are highly emotional based on the amount of money they're about to invest, based on the fact that this is their place of residence. This is their shelter, one of the primal human needs. So people are very emotional about the product that we service and sell. So you see, a lot of times you might see the worst in somebody.
You do, and they are emotional about their home where they raise their family, and most people only do this transaction a couple times in their life, and and then there's the other side where you have investment properties where people are making very calculated, important investment decisions, and you're charged with advising and handling that, and it's just not to be taken lightly, and also it's really an honor to earn that opportunity, and it's not handed out easily, so I think that's a disconnect also, as far as earning people's business.
Yeah. And so I would the point I guess we're trying to make here for new agents, people that want to get in the business but are already in the business trying to find a foothold. Brian Buffini says that real estate agents should be the eye of the storm. They should be the grounded, the calm, the cool, collected, the voice of reason, not to get sucked into that emotion. So one of the things that this business is, or that defines professionalism, I guess you could say, is that, being the trusted advisor means not getting wrapped up in the emotion of this transaction.
And that takes some practice and it takes some experience to get to that point, and it just doesn't come right, in the beginning, so.
One of the beautiful things about this industry is that you are forming relationships. If you're doing it the right way,
right,
you're forming, in some cases, lifelong friendships with these people. So if somebody tries to mistreat them and you feel you care for them like you should, it's just human nature to want to react, to protect them, and to fight back, and to lash back, and to do whatever it takes to protect them. And a lot of times, if we do that, we can put the transaction in jeopardy. And the whole reason why they hired us is to make this deal happen, to get it closed, to get them sold and onto their next, or get them in this property that they desperately want to live in. So we don't want to jeopardize the transaction. So there's a whole mindset around that, a filter that we have to have, a control over our emotions. But what about the discipline it takes? So, when you were working for the family business, you had expectations. You had duties you had to perform every week. So if you, as being basically the owner of your own business now, you don't have to get out of bed if you don't want to.
But now that we've built a team, obviously there's, people count on us and stuff like that. So that's, once you build a team that, you have, people that count on you, that you got to go. But let's say you're a new agent and you don't have that yet. It's about really understanding. It goes back to your why. Why am I doing this? And what am I setting out to do? And do I want to be great at it? Well, okay, if all those things, if I know my why and I want to be great, well, here are the things I got to do every day. And it's just about being true to ourselves and what we're trying to accomplish. We get up and we go to the office every day at 8 a.m., just like we're clocking in almost. because it's just what we do. And I think that's what we've always done, no matter what job we had,
And just circling back here, you mentioned that one of the reasons that people reach out to you and inquire about getting into real estate is they see this freedom factor. And it's not, if you're in business for yourself, this whole freedom, Gary Vee says entrepreneurs eat shit for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, right? So hate to be crass, but that's what he says. And he's right. I mean, this is not an easy to be a business owner. And this is the mindset that you have to have if you're going to be successful in real estate. You have to own the fact that you are a business owner and you've got to run it like a business. But if you're not self-motivated, because there's not going to be anybody cracking the whip to get you out of bed unless you have a really authoritarian wife who holds you accountable or something.
Right. You bring up a really good point, is that I think the people that really excel are the people that have an entrepreneurial spirit about them. Sure, we're salespeople, and in our communications with the clients, we're in a salesperson type role, but you have to be able to see the big picture, is that we are building a business. And I think those people that are really get that part of it, and really that's what I love about this business. That's my favorite part, is the freedom, not the freedom to not go to work, or, sure, I love going to my kids' ball games and never having to miss no matter what, but the freedom to build my business however I want, that's the freedom that I love about this business. And that's, if I make a mistake, it's on me. I suffer the consequences and I learn from it. So that is what I really love about it.
That's a powerful point that I'm going to rip off and steal from now on. So whenever I get approached, if you're going to approach me about getting the real estate business, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to redefine freedom, especially if they bring up that freedom. Oh, I just wanted this freedom to, take off whenever I want, or if I want to work, I can want to work. And, don't get us wrong. There are agents that we know that'll take a month off. That's part of their why. So I've got a couple that owns a real estate team that I'm friends with in the Dallas area. They just made a pact. They were like, listen, we're going to work as hard as we possibly can, 11 months out of the year. And we're going to take a month off, and we're going to do that until our kids go off to college. We're going to spend a month with them. They do like road trips every June. So you do have the freedom to do that. But I think this is a really powerful point to redefine freedom. It's, I was talking to a potential recruit yesterday who works for another brokerage, and she was saying, I'm happy where I'm at. I like the people I work with. I just don't have the freedom to explore new opportunities and build a business like I want to. And so I think that is like super, super powerful. All right. Now I want to talk about, you mentioned having a why. Let's define, what does that mean? Having a why. Obviously your why, which we're talking about here, is what drives you. But what does that mean to you?
So, what's the connection between, what you do every day? What really connects it to your heart, to make you do the things that's necessary, So for me, of course, I want to create a life for my children. I want to be able to pay for them to go to college, and I want to be able to go on vacation, and I want to be able to have nice dinners and all that. But really, that's not what drives me. I never look at my bank account and look and see how much money we have, or as far as trying to make it big. It's more about, for me, is accomplishment, achievement, not being regretful. And I don't want to look back and have regret, and I don't want to waste potential. So it's these sort of things that drive me to really go do the things that we do. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Now, there's some key things that I'm dissecting from what you're saying. I often find that agents I'm talking to that have gotten in the business that aren't finding success or building momentum or building a consistent pipeline, they're not connected to their why. And oftentimes that's because it's too lofty. When your why is too lofty, it's just too loose. You're not connected to it. It doesn't really mean anything. It sounds like, I want to have financial freedom for my family.
Right.
But it's just, I want to never have to worry about money, or I want my husband's in a dangerous job and I want him to, and he's always want to start his own business. I want him to be able to afford to do that. And I've had to have very uncomfortable conversations with these agents and go, that's not what you really want.
Right. I don't know how this is going to sound, but another why that I have is I like to prove people wrong. I want to prove, and this may be like a selfish thing, I don't know, but like kind of, it's like I want to prove them wrong. I want to show that I can do this, or prove it to if you look at professional athletes, they have a lot of those same type of whys where like if someone says I can't do it, man, I really want to do it. Or I want to prove to people that I can do this and don't need this other part, Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes total sense, especially to me, because I have had the same issues and the same self-discovery around why. Because when I started in real estate, I started with Keller Williams, who does have a great training program and a great culture. Very early on, I was in classes and we were talking about discovering your why. And so grateful to them for that. Although at the time I wasn't really ready to receive or understand. I really needed somebody to help me clarify what that was, because mine was one of those lofty whys. It was, I would say, financial freedom. If I got a little bit selfish, I would say, you know what? I've always been in love with waterfront property. I want to live on the water. That's my dream. Mm-hmm. But those things, financial freedom, being able to travel, having waterfront property, having a nice car, having a big bank account, those things were not getting me off my butt to make the calls, to make the dials. It wasn't getting me on the phone. So I can't remember who it was, but we're both learning-based agents. We can certainly talk about that later. But just started going to seminars and conferences very early on in my career, and I heard somebody say, I wish I could remember who it was, but talk about how gave me permission for my why to be selfish. And so growing up, I was just always the screw up, the party animal, the drunkest at the party, always getting in trouble. The term black sheep of the family was mentioned a few times. And I'd walk into my parents having conversations with friends going, God, I hope, we're really praying for you about Jason. And we hope he does something with his life and turns himself around. And so I think when I went to that training and I got permission to be selfish, that's what I realized that was driving me, is that I had something to prove, because that person I was just a person with self-esteem issues who had a lot of potential, and I was going to show them.
So I guess I shouldn't hold back anymore. I guess so. I like that you shared that, and that's very personal. For me, it was, okay, so my parents, obviously they have those two businesses they have built. They are successful. I learned all those work ethic from them, but a lot what drives me is to create my own success without them, and without that being under their wing, so that's the truth. I really wanted to create my own path, blaze my own trail, and create my own success that I can go to bed at night and say, I did this.
Well, I would like to give anybody listening the permission to connect to whatever it is. It can be noble and lofty, but if that's what really drives them, because for some people that is, but they shouldn't feel bad if it just happens to be something selfish. Because if it's selfish, the way I look, this is the way I make peace with it, and let me know if this is what you do. So the way I make peace with it is, I'm connected to something very selfish, but it drives me, so it works. And if I'm driven and I'm performing at my best, or I'm at least reaching toward my full potential, everybody around me wins. My team wins, my agents win, my wife, my kids, my family, everybody wins. And so that's okay. It could be as stupid as having a shoe, being just crazy about buying Jimmy Chang shoes or whatever those things are. But what do you think about that?
I think anybody that's pretty successful has made sacrifices, so there's definitely things we sacrifice. So what has happened to me is, okay, we have some success and people are always trying to rein me in. My broker a little bit tries to rein me in a little bit, not to, everybody. Then what happens is, once you get some momentum, then we can be intentional about time off and stuff like that. And just because you have a selfish why doesn't mean we're selfish people, and that it's more important than our families or anything like that. I look at like Gary Vee or Bill Yu guy. I've been following him with the impact theory.
Yeah.
He says some really brilliant things about his wife not encumbering his ambition, because that would kind of cripple him as a man, So I think there's some really good things to learn there, and then just being real intentional with time off and spending time with the family. So it's not like we're neglecting, we're just trying to be the best we can be.
Again, this is a hard industry, so you need to connect to what drives you, because whether you think it's easy or not, I can tell you, listen, I had one guy join our team. He was a past client. He used to call. When he was in college, he used to work in the fundraising department, whatever that is. So he would call alumni and ask them for donations. So you would think this is a perfect person for what we do. He's all I'm going to ask him to do is do the same thing, but about real estate. Ask him to, get him to ask people if they know, or if they know somebody that's looking to buy, sell, or invest. Seems perfect. The guy totally froze. Probably lasted a week or two.
Okay.
Just couldn't do it, and had a history of sitting in a cube, dialing for several hours straight, asking for donations, and was unable to turn the corner here in real estate, and basically just replicate what he was doing at, I believe, at Auburn University, and do it in the real estate business. So, and I'm sure he thought it too. He thought, well, no problem. All I got to do, I've done it before. This is going to be easy. It is not easy. It's anything but easy.
Making phone calls?
Just the business in general, but especially asking people for business, especially asking people that for business.
Some agents believe, that communicating with their sphere of influence, they don't want to seem salesy and, or whatnot, but these people want to do business with you. We just have to communicate with them in the right way. Even if it's not asking for business, providing them value so there's a relationship, and then they will send you business if they trust you.
I really wanted the theme of this show to be about the reasons why this industry has a black cloud over it. And
let's talk about that.
Yeah, there's a nice transition here where we're talking about like the fear. When I try to connect my agents to things that will help them overcome that fear. And one of the things is, like, you have a responsibility to communicate with your friends, family, past clients, whomever. If you're a servant-hearted agent, you read and reread the contracts, you study this business, you work on being a problem solver. If you've got good intentions and a good work ethic, then you have a responsibility to reach out to these people. Otherwise, they're going to fall in the hands of an agent who's, doing 3 transactions a year, who doesn't know how to get a deal done. And it's a problem. And there's where the issues, arise in our industry.
We do have an issue, I think, you have part-time agents, and there's nothing wrong with being part-time in the beginning. We really need 100% committed professionals, and if you are that, then like you said, these people need your help. You do have a responsibility to try to provide that level of service for those people. Don't feel like you're bothering them. If you really believe in what you do, make it available and show them what it's like to work with a true professional. Gosh, we could get into all the discount brokerages and stuff that are trying to disrupt our industry. And the reason that is happening is because people have had bad experiences with real estate agents, sometimes can't see the value. That has opened up a huge door. So that's a huge problem. That's probably a whole podcast.
Right. You said in the beginning, you talked about communication. So are you talking about like you personally being a good communicator? Are you talking about just the consistency at which you communicate, like you're great at follow-up, or kind of define that for me? What do you mean there?
Not necessarily. The consistency and the follow-up is critical. But no, I'm thinking about the ability to listen and then be able to communicate back, in a way that makes these people feel comfortable with you. You're making the person you feel that you're talking to feel comfortable, and that you're engaged, and that you're addressing their concerns in a way that does not elevate the emotions, so you're helping them see the big picture, so you're really listening. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So I think, especially for new agents, these part-time agents that we're like really trying to encourage you to pick a side here, really. If you're going to sell real estate, the goal needs to be to sell it full-time eventually. If not, get out. Go do something else, because there's no way. Like if I do start doing something well, and then I stop doing it for 3 months, and then I try to do it well again, it's not like magic. This is not that's like riding a bike. It's not, so you may not, all these things about knowing like, hey, my job, I need to listen more and talk less. That's how that's one of my big value propositions as a professional. I ask the right questions. I listen intently to what they're saying. And that's how I'm able to provide the service that they need, a service that's catered to their specific needs. If you're doing 3, 4, 5, 6 transactions a year, that ain't you.
Yeah. I also encourage everybody to hire a coach and go all in, or my broker that I'm currently with now, I remember he told me, and it really made me mad in the beginning. He said, you can't make it if you're part-time. And I really thought I could, so this was like 7 or 8 years ago, or so, I don't know when it was, 5 years ago. I was like, yeah, if anybody can do it, I can. You haven't met me yet. He was so right. Once I made that commitment to say, okay, I'm going all in, my business grew pretty rapidly. Yeah, that's my experience with that.
There's some little catchphrases that would be key in the industry. I think all in is very, very appropriate. All right, let's talk about consistency next. I mean, if anybody is got a problem with consistency, it would surely be part-time agents. But what do you feel like? Why do you feel like consistency is important to building a successful real estate business?
We have to create habits. If you're not consistent with prospecting, you're going to have a roller coaster type business, of income, and then also you're not going to have people's respect, and you're not going to have the people around you. They're not going to view you as a professional. They're not going to refer you business. They're not going to ask you questions about what you're doing. And you're probably going to be a frustrated real estate agent. So winning habit is really, the skills can come later. If you're just consistent and you come to the office and you call people for 2 hours a day, you will make a living if you can just do that, and follow up and call new people.
Yeah, because if you don't know the answer to something and you're a good communicator, you're going to find out and call them back.
Right.
But most of this business is just asking questions and listening. You'd be amazed if you're listening to people, you're making notes, you call them 2 weeks later, a month later, whatever it is to check in, depending on what their time frame is to buy or sell. Mm-hmm. And you start referring back to your notes like, oh yeah, last time we talked, you were talking about the grandkids and how are they doing? They're going to be like, wow, Dusty was really listening to what I had to say. The difference here, I think, is that what we're talking about is a relational approach. And the agent that is just trying to sell, it's a transactional approach. Now, both can work, but obviously the relational approach is, how you build a legacy business, I would say. And that's really what's important to you in terms of your why. At the end of the day, your why is about a legacy, leaving behind something you're proud of because you don't want to be, on your deathbed and go, I could have done more. So the legacy business is actually putting people first. And if you're in the real estate business to supplement your income.
Can they see my face?
Yeah. I mean, these people, we were talking in the office the other day, a group of agents on my team about, how the board, it would be very, very noble of them, or I don't know what the correct word is, to put some type of requirement in. Say, listen, at some point, if you're not doing a certain number of transactions, and I think it stems from lessons that I've learned starting a real estate business and really opening the doors to anybody and everybody that wanted to come. And I thought that was a noble thing to do. Mm-hmm. I thought that was selfless. I thought that was, just being very generous and just like, listen, come to the door. I'm going to help you. And then I'm going to give you all this stuff for free. And, then I eventually hired a CEO who was like, Jason, you're an enabler.
Wow.
Yeah. That was a truth that hit me like a ton of bricks right between the eyes. But he's like, you're just enabling these people to be what they've always been, not to live up to their full potential. And I think that's what the board is doing on a much broader level with 3,000 plus agents or however many we have in Baldwin County, and Mobile County is just shy of that. So these agents that are just doing it here or there, I don't know, is that too harsh, you think?
Well, I don't know the solution for that, I mean, I definitely think the amount of agents and the amount of part-time agents and the amount of hobbyists is a problem. If I really like to have a solution, here's the thing. I think that those people will be weeded out if the market changes and things become difficult. They will find out that this is not as easy. But the revolving door isn't healthy either. A bunch of people coming in, a lot of people going out.
It's a tricky deal. The real slippery slope here is that the next Dusty Cole, you never know what the circumstances are in their life. So let's say they just have a longer learning curve, or they're dealing with something at home, or a family member is sick. You know, you never know if you toss somebody out, whether they could have just been on the verge or had that potential to really crush it in this industry.
That's a really good point, you know, because you just never know, you know. So, I mean, that's why I think I think I would believe in just kind of letting it naturally happen instead, I mean, I'm sure there's some things the board could probably, you know, implement that would help. But here's the thing, as long as the disruptors, they're coming into the marketplace, you know, we just have to watch that. I think that's the thing where we have to make sure we are providing enough value to the consumer that we can keep control of our industry, you know.
Yeah, I think one of the big starts would be if you've got a agent who's getting consistently, there's a lot of complaints around that agent. That may be something that could be investigated and looked at. It's so archaic the way these real estate boards conduct themselves, because there really is nothing, like if you file a grievance against another agent, I mean, at the end of the day, it might be a $500 fine. I mean, it's almost not even worth the effort to do it.
I think we could educate the consumer and help them choose real estate agents. What are the things you should ask before you work with a buyer's agent or a listing agent? Look at their credentials and help them make decisions on who they hire. I think that would help solving the problem.
Perfect segue into my favorite topic, which is content and helping new agents get out of their comfort zone and start producing video content. I think it goes back to that the best way to educate the consumer, to reach the masses, to do it on the broadest scale possible, is to use video and social media. And so you're just not going, hey, this is Dusty Cole with Remax of Orange Beach. You know anybody wants to buy or sell? You're going, hey, this is Dusty Cole with Remax of Orange Beach. This is how we serve. This is how we sell. This is how we market. This is how we solve problems. Even if it's just showcasing your hustle, we're in the office every day at 8. We treat this not like a hobby. We treat it like a business. We run it like a business, and we treat it like a business. That's going to resonate with people. They're going to go, that's who I want to hire. Right. That's who I want to hire. I love my sister-in-law who sells 3 houses a year, but this is a very important transaction. That's who I'm hiring.
That's the differentiator. And you can convey that at a much higher level, absolutely, with video and through social media, you know, or other mediums.
We'll do a little myth busting, and then we're running out of time. We need to wrap it up. But so agents are like, I don't want to toot my own horn. I don't want to be braggadocious. That's a common thing that I hear. And I don't want the spotlight, but I'm trying to connect them back to the responsibility they have. If they are, like you said before, connected to what they do, if they believe in the service they provide. If you believe in what you do, make it available. That's what you said. Well, there's no better way to make it available than the combination of video and social media. That's what I want them to connect. If they believe in what they do, that means they're going to do it at a high level. They need to showcase that. And not only will it help them not fall in the hands of an inept agent, a part-time agent who doesn't know what they're doing, who doesn't necessarily believe or have the confidence in what they're doing, but it's going to help them grow their business tremendously.
Just be yourself. If what could be the harm in conveying who you are, you know, to these people at a broader scale? You're doing it already one-on-one and at the micro level. You know, so don't be somebody you're not in these videos, you know, but just try to convey who you are. Disclaimer, I do it. I'm not very good at it. I'm not like, you know, you do it at a very high level. I try to use video, but I believe in it. And I'm willing to do it, you know, but just be yourself with it. And I challenge my agents. I said, just do it once a week for such and such time, and then thank me when you take your family on a vacation.
Absolutely.
You know.
All right. So let's give some people some takeaways, some homework assignments from this podcast. I'll just start with the last one you mentioned. It's the one that I mentioned during my talk at Impact Agent Conference. My assignment to everybody was, do one video a week, one piece of video content per week, and just start there. You know, a lot of people are like, oh, you got to do 2 posts a day, and you got to post it this time and that time. I'm like, forget all the analytics, forget all the rules. Just create it, post it. That's where you start. That's number one. The next thing going backwards would be, to practice consistency. You're talking about the power of habits. There's a lot of audiobooks that can get on that. There's podcasts that can listen to on that. I'm currently listening to, in my vehicle, it's called Atomic Habits. It's a great book, and that's all it talks about. Communication. What is an assignment? You want to give somebody an assignment about how they can work on better communication, whether that's just the frequency at which they call people or the way that they listen. This would be a valuable way if we could show somebody if they're talking too much and listening too little. Like, how do people recognize if they're talking too much? Or what is a practice that they could implement to kind of test whether they're talking too much?
Maybe in the team meeting, people could bring an example, okay, and make them be mindful of it. Okay, so give me an example of when your communications in the last week, when things got heated and you kept your cool, helped them look at the big picture and resolved, and then everybody kind of is mindful of thinking about it.
Yeah, or it could be a role play session where you're practicing with a FSBO expired, an internet lead, whatever it is, buyer or seller. If the person who is acting in the role of the agent is trying to sell themselves as opposed to asking questions and listening and trying to seek to understand, then that would be a great exercise. You mentioned Tom Bilyeu's impact theory. I would highly recommend. People are always asking me, who should I listen to? Who should I follow? That person should be top of your list.
He's a smart dude.
A very smart dude. And it's very much mindset based. Okay, so then I have, connecting to your why, connecting to what drives you, really spending some time to figure out what that is. And as long as it is, not immoral or unethical, it's okay.
Of course, yeah.
As long as it's legal.
Right.
If your why is heroin, we need to change that. But,
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah, as long as it can be selfish, it's okay to be selfish. That was probably one of the greatest gifts that I got, was somebody giving me permission to be selfish with my why. And, we never got to really dive into being learning based. That's a whole nother podcast. But a lot of these things that we know and understand in our business today is because we're learning based, because we hire coaches, because we have a commitment to learning. And then what else? So discipline. And that's just really treating it, not being a hobbyist, treating it like a business. So really, you could reflect on your mindset around what you do. Is it just a hobby? Is this something that I think could be the vehicle for my legacy? Ooh, that's a powerful.
Examine your business.
Yeah.
And, I had somebody text me recently after I mentioned that at a BCR thing, and they said, "Thank you for bringing that up. Like, I didn't realize that I wasn't all in." So yeah, examine.
I love it. All right. So I think it would be really powerful. There's a lot of people that we know that we could share this interview with. You could send it in, you could tag somebody in a Facebook post as soon as this podcast drops, but you can share it from your phone. We're going to put you can share the video, but sharing this podcast with an agent who is part-time, who maybe lacks the confidence or whatever the reason or the excuse is. It really comes down to excuses or results. Whatever the excuse is that's holding them back, or somebody that's struggling with mindset, just like you said, it may be, a lot of times it's something so simple like, hey, I examined my business, I reflected on the last 6 months or the last year or the last 3 months and realized I wasn't all in. I think that's a great way to end. Dusty Cole.
Hey, man, this is a lot of fun. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for joining us on the Impact Agent Podcast. I want to thank my audience for listening. Again, this show does not have any sponsors. That could be a sad thing, but we have no sponsors. So there's nothing in this for you and I other than to share information and pay it forward. And the way that we can reach more people is for, everybody watching and or listening to share this with somebody that they care about, that they see potential in. Thank you, Dusty Cole.
Good job, Jason. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thanks for listening to the Impact Agent Podcast. If you like the show and got something out of it, please like the Impact Agent Podcast on Facebook and rate and review the show on iTunes or anywhere you listen to podcasts. This really helps us grow the show and helps other agents find it. Please share it with your friends and coworkers as well. Want us to deliver the show to you via email every week? Then email me at jason@impactagentuniversity.com and we'll send you the show every week. Please let us know what you think about the show, what you like, what you don't, or possibly make a suggestion about a topic you want to hear. Email me at jason@impactagentuniversity.com or leave us a message on Facebook at Impact Agent Podcast. Until next week, everybody be productive, safe, and happy, and always keep learning. This podcast is produced by Johnny Gwynn at Deep Fried Studios in Mobile, Alabama, and is paid for and powered by ImpactAgentUniversity.com.